Her slave killed my slave.
You paint a wall now? Well, he paint a wall now. He paint a butt on the wall.
This man should not have the right to vote.
What? He works for this office. He's the foreman.
Okay, he gets half a vote.
How about 3/5?
That sounds fair.
Andy.
With the announcements of last week's official Office spinoff, the fandom has been set ablaze with opinions ranging from fear, confidence, excitement, and despair. But the real thread throughout thousands, if not tens of thousands of comments that I've read over the last few years, with even the idea of a potential reboot on the horizon, was a question of if The Office could even be made in today's world of our heightened sensitivities to all things politically incorrect. With the actors, showrunners, writers, and all the more weighing in on the topic over the last several years, plus the announcement of the reboot, this seems like a good time to explore the interesting topic in a nuanced and analytical look at the writing and the humor of the series. Like, what could go wrong? Having completed deep dives of almost every episode of The Office in the last several years, I thought that this would kind of be like a layup of a video. Instead, it took a lot of time reading, learning, watching, writing, and discussing with my one black friend if the show meets the internet's ever-changing standard of woke. But before we can even get into the topic, we need to calibrate on what the word woke even means, because
It's a made-up word used to trick students.
it means different things to different people, and we can't have a single conversation about something if we're using different language. Originally, based on what I've gathered, the phrase was used akin to wake up by the African American community about social issues around them, particularly dangerous situations. The adjective carries on today, referring to being alert to racial or social discrimination and/or injustices. The word, though, by definition, is evolving. It's progressing, meaning for something to be woke, it is really only woke in regards to the cultural sentiment of a very specific snapshot in time. That which may be acceptable today is potentially viewed as problematic in the future, making analyzing a TV show which stopped airing over a decade ago kind of difficult. The problem is further exacerbated by the connotation or the feelings that a person has with the word, which can be very personal and a very individualistic thing. Some view the term, when applied to a television show or film, as a vehicle for representation of underrepresented groups in our society, and/or commentary on social injustices.
That's good.
Some others view woke TV or film as a vehicle to coerce viewers into accepting particular points of view.
Ooh, that's bad.
Both seem to view wokeness as a criteria by which a work of art should be judged. If something isn't woke enough, the creators potentially lose an audience. If something is too woke, the creators potentially lose an audience. And in the wake of woke is a cancel culture to boot, with people being criticized, losing work, and/or social media followers, creating a vibe that influencers and celebrities, in our case TV shows, well, that they're being judged simply by existing and potentially breaking from societal norms of their time, which they are being judged. But to be clear, this is nothing new, nor does it belong to any particular side of the political spectrum. As a kid, I always grew up watching Nick at Night, and I was blissfully unaware of the heavy criticism that some of these shows had during their times for being too progressive. Mary Tyler Moore, for example, for its feminist angle. The Brady Bunch was criticized for shooting scenes with a married couple in their bed at night. Star Trek was and is about social issues, also giving us one of the first, or at least early on-screen interracial kiss. All of these things were criticized, boycotted, canceled, whatever we want to call it. Greatest generation parents telling their boomer kids that modernity is progressing away from their way of life, with boomers telling their parents to suck it, mom, I love the Beatles. This isn't new. And to pull another example from my childhood was the Dixie Chicks, a pretty popular country band while I was in high school, who spoke out against the actions of then President George W. Bush's planned invasion of Iraq, which created a giant backlash, resulting in criticism, radio stations banning their music, and even receiving death threats, which is nothing new either, because John Lennon was getting canceled way back in the 60s for saying that the Beatles were more popular than Jesus. Humans have always been criticizing bad ideas as early as we can detect, and from my very very limited point of view and knowledge. It seems like this is intrinsically wired into us to criticize that which fits in and sits outside of our circles, and the ability to cancel aspects of our society which don't vibe with us any longer brings about opportunities of growth for human civilization. Even if the cancellation process used to be a little bit more brutal than, like maybe losing some social media followers. So right along with the protest songs of the 60s and the 70s, all the Nickelodeon environmentally conscious PSAs that I watched growing up, and modern comedy, be it stand-up or TV or film.
I did stand-up comedy once.
You did?
Yeah, I killed.
These are just art forms, which are, not always, but often, used to bring attention to societal issues. And some would define that as woke.
Society sucks. I don't even consider myself a part of society.
Where is the line? Should we step over the line? How far should we step over the line? What's the criticism that we'll get for stepping over the line? And what impact will this have to our bottom line? These are all old questions, not new ones. What is new, though, is just how quickly the conversations about what's in and what's out get broader, louder, and muddier than ever before in human history. Cool, so hopefully that felt like a great overview of the nuances of the word, which brings us to The Office, and if its complete work can be called woke. So I'll start with my very first thought on the question, could The Office be made today? And first, removing as much snark as I possibly can from the delivery here, do you love The Office? For the spread at which this channel seems to invite across the political spectrum, I'd suggest that pro-woke and anti-woke people are watching this video. Do you love The Office today, right now, as it exists? Then yes, The Office absolutely could be made today. While irreverent and sometimes offensive, the fandom's demographics are all over the place, spanning generations, races, and socioeconomic groups. And it continues to find new audiences today, which is all the more reason that this question strikes me as odd, because of course The Office could be made today. There's worse shows out there right now. The Office currently has millions of fans around the world who binge the series every day and puts on the show even as white noise in the background.
Pun.
Now, it is certainly possible that we give the benefit of the doubt to The Office, that we look back at it as some relic of its time, and in that process, we end up overlooking the problematic aspects just because the series means a lot to us. But A, we don't do that with a lot of things, and B, I think it's a lot more complicated than that. I also think that if The Office aired today, I wonder how much of the audience would consider this series a woke piece of garbage because a gay person of color's struggle for acceptance took center stage for an early season premiere. But that's not to say that there were not lines that The Office crossed during its run. Some things have now been censored. Bits like the blackface used in Dwight's Christmas is a great example of the showrunners retroactively removing things due to the evolving nature of social sentiments.
No, that crosses the line.
But thinking of that joke, it is a perfect example of how The Office leveraged its offensive, politically incorrect humor. Nate didn't appear in blackface to suggest that it was okay to do this. But quite the opposite was actually true. That blackface moment was wrapped in disclaimers about the idea being outdated. And how can I say this if the show didn't say it? Well, the show did say it because Dwight was actively censoring himself. Still so, the bit was removed to prevent it from being taken out of context. Which, to be clear, personally, I don't have a problem with retroactively censoring things because sometimes reality isn't what we're dealing with. It's the perception of reality. And on that point, context is key for most of the humor in this series.
I would love to buy you a fresh set of underwear.
If a pie chart could exist of all of The Office's offensive jokes, then I think a decent portion of those dealing with race, gender, and/or sexuality find a balance of knowing that whoever spoke that joke was in the wrong. Oftentimes the narrative directly deals with their poor behavior, and/or we get a Jim face suggesting, hey, get a load of what that guy just said.
Just try not to be too gay on the court.
Point being that characters saying offensive things are not being portrayed as virtuous for doing so. Dwight saying something sexist, for example,
I dreamed that the number 2 was the most valued number in the world. Women were considered the best gender.
Well, the point of the joke is not to embolden a sexist person to double down in their behavior, but rather to demonstrate Dwight's narrow-mindedness. Michael saying something offensive about another race, for example.
Hello, everybody! Oh, that'll be fair! And Mr. Horny, right? You know what I'm talking about. Oh, yeah.
Is not there to suggest that punching down to minorities is acceptable and encouraged, but rather, Michael has something left to learn, which he often does. We're in on the joke most of the time, and I think The Office navigated these waters more often than not quite expertly. And that's because the writers knew the power of audiences' abilities to change their sentiments about the series on a dime based on a joke not being paid off in the narrative or the editing. Take Diversity Day, for example. Michael's attempt to fix hundreds of years of America's history with race relations ends up causing more mayhem than anticipated, but the inciting incident was Michael, a white guy performing the social commentary stand-up routine from Chris Rock. Michael humorously failed to understand why it's not okay for him to do this routine.
How come Chris Rock can do a routine and everybody finds it hilarious and groundbreaking, and then I go and do the exact same routine and people file a complaint to corporate?
But the bit itself does clue us into a little bit of the mind of Greg Daniels, the original showrunner for the series, who said he didn't sleep a wink the night after they filmed this whole thing, which very much did include Steve Carell dropping N-bombs all over the place. And at dawn's first light, Greg Daniels rode to the studio to get the master copies of this entire thing bleeped out.
Wow, what did I tell you about the bleep button?
Meaning that there is no recorded evidence of any of the offending bit, keeping the joke within its proper context. Point being that context is key, and they found a way to make Michael both the bumbling offender in this episode as well as the ineffectual savior, and we get commentary on both of these. Now, as the series progressed, Michael stepped in and out of more taboo topics as the writers got even better at navigating these waters of balancing social commentary without appearing preachy, keeping the political incorrectness in the foreground without crossing a line so far that they could not come back, which is the case throughout all of season 2, with the likes of drug use, sexual harassment.
Well, I would definitely have sex with Ryan.
And even more being played with. But season 3's gay witch hunt creates a chef's kiss of balance. Michael's ignorance once again is on full display, with calling an employee a derogatory term.
No, that is the fun of this place. I call everybody Why would anyone find that offensive?
Which was super not okay to use, even jokingly, in the workplace in 2007. But throughout this episode, we see a similar pattern as we did in Diversity Day. Michael created the drama by crossing the line and attempts to get everybody on board with his new outlook. His motives aren't truly to help people progress to accept homosexuality, though, mainly because everybody in the office was pretty much okay with it, except Angela, which is commentary on its own. But Michael's motives throughout the gay witch hunt were just to make sure his people knew that he wasn't trying to be mean.
Gay porn, straight porn, it's all good.
Which he wasn't. All of this culminates to a moment of realness where Michael is faced with genuine emotions from Oscar, who's tired of being belittled by his boss, and Michael authentically apologizes. The kiss thereafter, while making a list of the most offensive things on The Office, is perhaps misremembered because the kiss itself is intended to reinforce the message of
gay good.
This pattern is a well that the writers went back to often, with episodes like Women's Appreciation, which began with problematic behavior, but ended with Michael wholeheartedly trusting the women's perspective on his issues.
Issues?
That's not to say that all of the offensive humor in The Office is somehow paid off and redeemed. There are several examples I could think of in which Michael is exhibiting racial stereotyping, sexist behavior, or homophobic behavior, in which the joke has just dropped and then moved on very quickly. There's no redemption, there's no Jim glance, it's just there, and it's just funny.
I'm not gonna have sex with you unless you bring out the garbage.
This is all the more true when Dwight, who, well within season 9, exhibits almost no character growth throughout the entire series. With Dwight, we get more unredeemed problematic behavior when it comes to his treatment of different races, of women, of homosexuals, and of animals.
What are you doing? No, it's not. What is the matter with you? Is that the beak?
Now look, we all have to think critically when we analyze a work's overall message and deeper meaning, and when I watch Dwight, I personally don't see an emboldened man just sticking it to the woke mob. I actually just see someone who values his heritage and is actively sorting through some of that in real time throughout the series. Most of his takes are spur of the moment, not well thought through ideas.
You're not allowing natural selection to do its work. You're like the guy who invented the seatbelt.
Keeping in mind that this is a fictional universe, Dwight was very much written to be the problematic voice of dissent amongst his peers. His takes then are not intended to be read as upright. Interestingly though, with the help of his coworkers and special lady friend, he does learn things along the way.
Good luck with your feelings.
In some cases, the writers of The Office even go out of their way to comment on the budding online social justice warrior movement.
Who is Justice Beaver?
With people like Andy. For example, in Season 7's D'Angelo era, Andy champions feminist causes in an attempt to be a pick-me dude, only to just drop all of that the moment he's invited into the good old boys club.
I'm gonna infiltrate and change from within. What's up, man cave?
Or we have the dicey, but not entirely spelled out Republican politician caught up in a scandalous homosexual affair. And this is like really interesting commentary on the hypocrisy, which seems to be innate in all humans, regardless of their politics, religion, or their particular feelings about wokeness. So, is The Office woke? Well, having now analyzed nearly every episode of The Office over the last several years, I could and probably have argued that the show, more often than not, attempts to walk the line between being politically incorrect while reinforcing progressive ideologies. That we know that these characters are not being virtuous in their offenses. These jokes are like progressive burritos wrapped in offensive tortilla shells.
What? You think I'm the voice of the Taco Bell dog?
In essence, The Office, in its context of 2005 to 2013, is a creation which elicits a response from the viewer, which is why I can have a series in which I'm calling out what I think seems to be the very clear message of an episode, only to have someone in the comments accuse me of reading what I want to see in the episode. But maybe that's the point. The Office, if I can get a little poetic here, seems to be a reflection of us, a Rorschach test revealing what we want to see in it, the good and the bad. A snapshot of time that we are no longer in, a simpler time on one hand, but revealing deeper and deeper things about our society and who we are the longer you look at it. Michael Scott, the offensive, foot-and-mouth, cringe-inducing boss of Dunder Mifflin, became the heartwarming character we all rooted for in spite of his low points, in spite of his poor behavior. Dwight, the guy who was raised in a lineage of Nazis with an arsenal of bad takes, learns to stop seeing people as livestock serving their purpose and instead sees people as people. Oscar, the gay, outspoken Democrat, and Angela, the hypocritical, outspoken Christian, end up foregoing all of the pretense and connect in a very genuine way. The series, more often than not, seems to be about building bridges rather than saying something offensive and laughing in someone's face about it. But I'm not sure if we would call that woke, because I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is that it's based on your interpretation, like everything else. So what are your thoughts? Leave them in the comments. I want to hear what you have to say. If you like this video, like it, subscribe, do all of the things. And thanks to all the supporters who support the channel. You guys are awesome.
Hey! Oh, yeah!
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.